The wind howled across the dark sea as Thomas clung to a piece of broken wood. His ship had gone down in the storm, and the cold water pulled at him with every wave. He was tired, his arms aching, and the night seemed endless. Just when he thought he couldn't hold on anymore, a figure appeared in the water. Her skin was pale, almost glowing, and her eyes locked onto his. She moved fast, cutting through the waves, and reached him before he could call out. "Hold still," she said, her voice soft but firm. She pulled him toward her, and he felt a strange warmth despite the icy water. She had long hair that floated around her like seaweed, and her hands were strong as she guided him deeper. He wanted to fight, to swim back to the surface, but his body gave in. The last thing he saw was her face, calm and steady, before everything went black. When Thomas woke, he was lying on a smooth rock under the sea. Bubbles floated around him, and the water didn't choke him like it should. He sat up, confused, and saw her sitting nearby. She wore a simple dress that shimmered like fish scales, and she watched him with those same deep eyes. "You're alive because I brought you here," she said. "My name is Mara. This is my home." Thomas coughed, tasting salt, but he could breathe. "Where am I?" he asked, his voice shaky. "Below the waves," Mara replied. "You were dying up there." "I couldn't leave you." He looked around. The light was dim, coming from strange plants that glowed softly. Fish swam past, and the rock felt warm under him. He didn't understand, but he felt safe with her. "Why did you save me?" he asked. Mara smiled a little. "You looked like you needed a second chance." "And maybe I did too." Thomas nodded, still unsure, but he felt a pull toward her. The storm was gone, and the sea was quiet now. He wondered what would come next, but for the moment, he was grateful to be alive. Days passed, or at least it felt that way. Time was hard to tell down there. Mara showed him how to move through the water, how to eat the strange fruits that grew on the ocean floor. She taught him to avoid the sharp rocks and the bigger fish that swam too close. He learned her home was a cave filled with treasures, old coins, broken jewelry, things lost by ships long ago. She told him she'd lived there for years, watching the surface world from below. One day, as they sat by a glowing pool, Thomas asked, "Why don't you ever go up there?" "To the land?" Mara's face grew sad. "I can't. The sun burns me. I'm not like you. I need the dark and the water to live." He felt sorry for her, stuck in this underwater world. "Then why stay here alone?" he asked. "I wasn't always alone," she said softly. "But the others, they're gone now." "You're the first I've brought here in a long time?" Thomas reached out and touched her hand. It was cold, but he didn't pull away. "I'm here now," he said. "Maybe we can figure this out together." She looked at him, her eyes shining. "Maybe," she whispered. Over the next few days, Thomas and Mara grew closer. He learned more about her life under the sea. She told him stories of ships she'd seen sink, of sailors she'd watched struggle, and how she'd always stayed hidden. Sometimes she'd swim out to the edge of her cave and look up toward the surface, her face full of longing. Thomas noticed how she avoided the brighter parts of the cave, sticking to the shadows where the glow was softest. One morning, or what felt like morning, Thomas woke to the sound of a low hum. He sat up and saw Mara standing near the cave entrance, staring out. The water around her rippled, and he could see dark shapes moving in the distance. "What's that?" he asked, swimming over to her. "Trouble," she said, her voice tight. "Other creatures live out there. They don't like strangers, and they might not like me helping you." Thomas peered into the dark water. The shapes were big, with long tails and sharp fins. He felt a chill, but he stayed close to Mara. "What do we do?" he asked. "We hide," she said. "Follow me." She led him deeper into the cave, where the walls closed in and the light faded. They squeezed into a small space behind a rock, and Mara pressed a hand to his chest to keep him still. Her touch was cold, but it calmed him. The hum grew louder, and then he heard a crash, like something hitting the cave walls. Mara's eyes narrowed, but she didn't move. After what felt like hours, the noise stopped. Mara peeked out, then motioned for him to follow. The cave was quiet again, but the water felt heavier, like it was holding its breath. "They're gone for now," she said, "but they'll be back. They smell you, a human, and they want to know why you're here." Thomas frowned. "I don't want to cause you trouble." "Maybe I should go." Mara shook her head. "You can't. The storm's still out there, and you'd die before you reached land. Besides," she paused, looking at him, "I don't want you to go." He felt his heart beat faster. "Then we'll fight them together," he said. "If they come back, we'll be ready." Mara smiled, a real smile this time. "You're braver than I thought," she said. She took his hand and led him to a corner of the cave where old weapons lay, rusted swords and spears from sunken ships. "We'll use these," she said, "and I'll show you how to move fast in the water." They spent the day practicing. Mara was quick, darting through the water like a fish, and she taught Thomas to kick hard and keep his balance. He wasn't as fast as her, but he got better. By the time the light dimmed, he felt ready, or at least less scared. They sat together, sharpening the weapons with stones, and Thomas felt a new kind of strength growing in him. That night, the creatures returned. The hum filled the cave again, and this time they came closer. 3 of them swam in, their eyes glowing red, their teeth bared. Mara grabbed a spear and handed Thomas a sword. "Stay behind me," she said, but he shook his head. "I'm with you," he replied. The fight was messy. The creatures were strong, snapping at them with their jaws. Mara stabbed one through the side, and it let out a shrill cry before swimming away. Thomas swung his sword, cutting another across its tail. The third lunged at him, but Mara tackled it, pinning it down until it stopped moving. When it was over, they were both breathing hard, blood from the creatures mixing with the water. "You did good," Mara said, touching his arm. Thomas grinned, tired but proud. The cave was safe again, at least for now. He looked at Mara, her wet hair sticking to her face, and felt something deeper than gratitude. Maybe this underwater world could be his home too. The cave grew quiet after the fight, but Thomas couldn't shake the feeling that more trouble was coming. He and Mara cleaned the weapons and moved the dead creature's body outside, letting the current carry it away. Mara seemed stronger now, her movements sharp and sure, but her eyes kept darting to the cave entrance. "They'll tell the others," she said. "This won't be the end of it." Thomas nodded, gripping the sword he'd used. It felt heavy in his hand, but he was starting to get used to it. "Then we'll keep fighting," he said. "I'm not leaving you alone." Mara looked at him, her expression soft for a moment. "You don't have to stay because of me," she said. "You could try to reach the surface if you want." He shook his head. "The storm's still out there, like you said. And I like it here. With you," he wasn't sure where the words came from, but they felt right. Mara didn't answer, but her hand brushed his, and that was enough. The next day, they worked on making the cave safer. Mara showed him how to move big rocks to block weaker spots in the walls. They piled treasures, old chains and broken cups, near the entrance as a warning to anything that might come close. As they worked, Thomas asked about her past. "How did you end up here?" he said. Mara paused, her hand still on a rock. "I was human once," she said. "A long time ago. I fell from a ship during a fight. Another like me saved me, turned me into this. But he's gone now, and I've been alone since." Thomas felt a pang of sadness. "I'm sorry," he said, "but you're not alone anymore." She gave him a small smile. maybe not. That night, the hum returned, louder than before. This time, it wasn't just 3 creatures, it was a whole group. Their red eyes glowed in the dark water, and their growls echoed off the cave walls. Mara grabbed her spear, and Thomas took his sword. "Stay close," she said, her voice steady. The fight was harder this time. The creatures swarmed, snapping and clawing. Thomas swung his sword, cutting one across the face, but another grabbed his leg. He yelled, kicking free, and Mara stabbed it through the back. They moved together, her speed matching his strength, and slowly they drove the attackers back. One creature, bigger than the rest, lunged at Mara, but Thomas threw himself in front, slashing its side. It roared and fled, the others following. When it was over, they collapsed against the cave wall, breathing hard. Mara's arm was scratched, and Thomas's leg stung where he'd been grabbed. "You saved me," she said, looking at him with wide eyes. "You saved me first," he replied, managing a tired grin. She bandaged his leg with a strip of cloth from her dress, her hands gentle. As she worked, the water around them stirred, and a new figure appeared. This one was taller, with dark hair and a cloak that flowed like smoke. Her eyes were black, and she carried a long staff. "Mara," she said, her voice cold, "you've broken our rules, bringing him here." Mara stood, stepping in front of Thomas. "He's no threat, Lira." "I saved him, that's all." Lyra's gaze shifted to Thomas. "Humans don't belong down here. He'll draw more trouble. You know the law." "I don't care about the law," Mara snapped. "He's staying." Lyra's lips curled into a thin smile. "Then you'll both face the council." Tomorrow she turned and swam away, leaving a heavy silence behind. Thomas looked at Mara. "What does that mean?" he asked. "It means we're in danger," she said. "The council decides who lives and who doesn't." "They won't like me keeping you. Then we'll convince them," Thomas said. "We'll show them I'm not a problem." Mara nodded, but her face was tight with worry. They spent the night preparing, gathering more weapons, and planning what to say. Thomas felt the weight of it all, but he wasn't ready to give up. Not on Mara, and not on this strange new life. The night stretched on, and the cave felt smaller with every passing hour. Thomas and Mara sat close, the glow of the plants casting long shadows across the walls. The weapons they'd gathered, rusted swords, broken spears, lay in a pile, but they both knew they might not be enough. Mara's hands trembled as she sharpened a spear, her eyes fixed on the cave entrance. The air grew heavy, and Thomas could feel the tension pressing down on them. The council's threat loomed larger with every word Lira had left behind, and he saw the fear in Mara's face, something he hadn't noticed before. "What happens if they say no?" Thomas asked, his voice low. He gripped the sword tighter, its weight a small comfort. Mara stopped sharpening and looked at him, her eyes dark. "They'll take you," she said, "or kill you. And me. They might banish me, or worse. They don't forgive breaking their rules." Thomas swallowed hard. "Worse? What's worse?" She hesitated, then spoke softly. "They could drain me. Take my strength, my life, until I'm nothing. It's how they punish those who defy them." The words hit him like a cold wave. He thought of the creatures they'd fought, the red eyes and sharp teeth, and now imagined a group of them, stronger, smarter, coming for Mara. "We won't let that happen," he said, forcing his voice to stay steady. "We'll fight them if we have to." Mara shook her head. "You don't understand. The council isn't like those creatures. They're older, more powerful. Lyra's just one of them, and she could crush us alone. The full council. We'd have no chance." The thought made Thomas's stomach twist, but he refused to back down. "Then we talk our way out." "You said they decide. Maybe they'll listen." Mara gave a bitter laugh. "They don't listen. They judge, and they've never liked me much. I've stayed out of their way for years, but bringing you here, it's the worst thing I could have done." Before Thomas could reply, the water outside the cave stirred violently. A deep, rumbling sound echoed through the walls, shaking the rocks they'd piled up. Mara jumped to her feet, spear in hand, and Thomas followed, sword raised. Shadows moved beyond the entrance, tall, cloaked figures with staffs glowing faintly. Lira was among them, her black eyes locked on the cave. Behind her stood 4 others, their faces hidden, but their presence overwhelming. The air grew colder, and Thomas felt a shiver run down his spine. "Step out, Mara!" Lyra's voice boomed, cutting through the water. "Bring the human." The council waits. Mara's grip tightened on her spear. "Run, if you can," she whispered to Thomas. "I'll hold them." "No," he said firmly. "We face them together." She looked at him, surprised, then nodded. They stepped out into the open water, the council forming a half circle around them. The figures were tall and silent, their staffs pulsing with a dim light that hurt Thomas's eyes. Lira stepped forward, her cloak billowing. "You've broken our law, Mara," she said. "A human, in our domain. Explain yourself." "He was dying," Mara said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. "I saved him." "That's all." "That's not all." Another council member spoke, his voice deep and rough. "He's alive, breathing our water. You've shared our secrets with him." "I didn't mean to," Mara started, but Lira cut her off. "Intent doesn't matter," Lira said. "The law is clear. He must be removed, and you must be judged." Thomas stepped forward, his heart pounding. "Wait," he said. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I didn't ask for this, but I'm staying with her. If you hurt her, you'll have to go through me." The council members exchanged looks, and a low chuckle came from one of them. "Brave, but foolish," the rough-voiced one said. "You're no match for us." Lira raised her staff, and the water around them began to swirl, pulling at Thomas's legs. Mara lunged at her, but another council member grabbed her arm, twisting it behind her back. "Stop!" Thomas shouted, swinging his sword. It glanced off Lyra's staff, sending a shock up his arm. The council closed in, their staffs glowing brighter, and Thomas felt a pressure building in his chest, like the water was trying to crush him. Mara struggled against her captor, her spear falling to the ground. "Let him go!" she cried. But the council's power was too strong. Thomas dropped to his knees, gasping as Lira loomed over him. "The judgment is set," she said. "Tomorrow, you both face the full trial. Pray your words are enough." The council released them, vanishing into the dark water as suddenly as they'd come. Mara crawled to Thomas, pulling him close. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't think they'd move this fast." Thomas coughed, the pressure easing, but the fear staying. "We'll find a way," he said, though he wasn't sure how. The cave felt like a trap now, and the council's threat hung over them like a storm ready to break. The cave felt like a prison after the council left. Thomas and Mara sat in silence, the weight of the trial pressing down on them. The glowing plants seemed dimmer, and the water around them carried a faint chill. Mara's face was pale, her usual strength replaced by a quiet dread. Thomas wanted to say something to lift her spirits, but the words stuck in his throat. "We need a plan," he said finally, breaking the silence. "We can't just wait for them to take us." Mara nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on the pile of weapons. "The trial's tomorrow," she said. "They'll bring us to the deep hall, where the council meets. It's a place of old magic. Water moves on its own there, and their power is strongest. If we fight, we won't win. But if we talk, maybe we can change their minds." Thomas frowned. "What can we say?" "They don't seem to care about reasons. They care about balance," Mara replied. "They think humans disrupt it. If we can prove you're not a threat, maybe show you're part of this place now, They might let you stay. He thought about the days he'd spent learning her ways, breathing the water, fighting by her side. I am part of it, he said. But how do we prove that? Mara's eyes lit up a little. There's a ritual, she said, an old one. It binds someone to the sea, makes them part of it forever. If you do it, they might see you as one of us. But it's risky. It could kill you if you're not ready. Thomas felt a knot in his stomach, but he nodded. If it saves you, I'll try. What do we need? She explained quickly. They needed a shell from the deepest part of the cave, a drop of her blood, and a vow spoken under the glowing pool. We have to do it tonight, she said, before the trial. If it works, we'll face them stronger. They moved fast. Mara led him to the cave's deepest corner, where the water grew darker and the pressure heavier. She found a large, spiraled shell buried in the sand and handed it to him. Then, with a sharp stone, she pricked her finger, letting a single drop of blood fall into the shell. It shimmered, turning the blood into a faint silver glow. Now, the vow, she said, repeat after me. I give myself to the sea, to its depths and its life, forever. Thomas took a deep breath, the water filling his lungs, and spoke the words. The shell pulsed in his hands, and a warm current spread through him. His vision blurred, and he felt a pull, like the sea was reaching inside him. Mara grabbed his arm, steadying him. Hold on, she whispered. The sensation passed, leaving him shaky but alive. His skin tingled, and when he looked at his hands, they had a slight shimmer, like Mara's. Did it work? He asked. I think so, she said, her voice full of hope. You're tied to the sea now. Let's hope the council sees it. The next morning, the water stirred again, and Lira appeared with 2 council members. Time's up, she said coldly. They were bound with thin, glowing ropes that tightened if they struggled and led through the dark water to the deep hall. The place was vast, with walls of black stone and a floor that glowed faintly. The full council sat on high seats, their staffs raised, their eyes fixed on Thomas and Mara. Lira stepped forward. The human lives, she said. Mara has defied us. The penalty is clear. Death for him, banishment, or draining for her. Mara stood tall. Wait, she said. Look at him. He's not human anymore. We performed the binding ritual. He's part of the sea now. The council murmured, and one member, an older figure with a crooked staff, leaned forward. Show us, he said. Thomas held out his hands, the shimmer still visible. He stepped into the center of the hall, feeling the water move around him. He spoke, his voice steady. I didn't choose to come here, but I've learned your ways. I've fought for Mara, for this place. I'm not a threat. I'm one of you. The council watched in silence. Lyra's face twisted with anger, but the older member raised a hand. The ritual is old and true, he said, but the law still stands. He must prove his worth. A test was set. The council summoned a massive creature from the depths, a beast with tentacles and glowing eyes. Defeat it, Lira said, and we'll consider your plea. Mara and Thomas exchanged a look. They grabbed their weapons, ready to fight. The beast roared, its tentacles lashing out. Thomas dodged, slashing at one while Mara stabbed another. They moved as a team, their bond giving them strength. The fight was brutal, the water churning with blood and fury. Finally, Thomas drove his sword into the beast's eye, and it sank, lifeless. The hall fell silent. The older council member nodded. You've proven yourself, he said. The human stays. Mara, you're spared, but watch your steps. Lira glared, but said nothing as the council dispersed. Thomas and Mara swam back to their cave, exhausted but alive. We did it, he said, smiling. Mara took his hand, her eyes warm. Together, she replied. And for the first time, the cave felt like home. The cave was quiet again, but the victory over the beast lingered in the air like a faint echo. Thomas and Mara sat by the glowing pool, their hands still trembling from the fight. The shimmer on his skin felt stronger now, a sign of the sea's claim on him. Mara's face held a mix of relief and worry, and Thomas knew the trial wasn't the end of their troubles. "We need to be ready," Mara said, breaking the silence. "The council might accept you now, but Lira won't let this go. She's got power, and she'll look for any excuse to come after us." Thomas nodded, his mind racing. "Then we build our own strength," he said. "We can make this place harder to attack. Maybe find allies down here?" Mira's eyes widened. "Allies? Most who live in these depths keep to themselves. But there's an old one, a turtle-like creature I've seen. He's wise and might help if we earn his trust." They set out the next day, swimming through the dark water toward the deeper parts of the sea. The pressure grew, and the light faded, but Mara guided him with confidence. After hours, they reached a wide ledge where a massive turtle rested. Its shell was covered in moss, and its eyes glowed faintly. It turned its head toward them, watching silently. "We need your help," Mara said, bowing slightly. "The council threatens us, and we seek protection." The turtle's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "Why should I care?" "You bring a human into our world. He's bound to the sea now," Mara replied. "He fought for me, for this place. We want peace, not trouble." The turtle studied Thomas, its gaze heavy. "Prove your worth," it said. "Bring me the pearl from the serpent's lair. It guards the deep currents, and it's no easy task." Thomas felt a jolt of fear, but nodded. "We'll do it," he said. Mara led him to a narrow passage, the water growing colder. The serpent's lair was a maze of jagged rocks, and soon they heard a hiss. A long, scaled body emerged, its eyes yellow and its fangs dripping. It struck fast, but Thomas dodged, slashing with his sword. Mara stabbed from the side, and together they drove it back. The serpent coiled, then fled, leaving a glowing pearl behind. They brought it to the turtle, who took it with a slow nod. "You've earned my aid," it said. "I'll guard your cave. But beware, Lira will strike soon." Back at the cave, they fortified it with the turtle's help, stacking rocks and setting traps with old chains. Days passed, and the tension grew. One night, the water exploded with movement. Lira led a group of council enforcers, their staffs blazing. The turtle roared, blocking the entrance, but Lira's power pushed it back. Thomas and Mara fought hard. He swung his sword, cutting an enforcer's staff, while Mara speared another. Lira advanced, her staff crackling, and struck Mara, sending her crashing into the wall. Thomas lunged, tackling Lira, and they grappled in the water. With a final effort, he wrested the staff away, breaking it against a rock. The light faded, and Lira's enforcers retreated. Mara groaned, pulling herself up. "You saved me," she whispered. "We saved each other," Thomas said, helping her stand. Lira glared from a distance, but swam away, defeated. The turtle returned, its presence a new shield. Thomas and Mara leaned against each other, the cave secure at last. The sea was their home now, and they'd protect it together. The cave settled into a fragile peace after the battle with Lira. The turtle stayed near the entrance, its massive form a constant guard, while Thomas and Mara worked to heal. Mara's side was bruised from the impact, and Thomas's arms ached from the fight, but they moved slowly, strengthening their home. They added more glowing plants to light the darker corners and wove nets from old ropes to catch fish, making the cave feel more like a sanctuary. Thomas noticed Mara watching the water more often, her eyes scanning for any sign of trouble. "Do you think she'll come back?" he asked one evening as they sat by the pool. Mara nodded, her voice low. "Lira's pride is hurt. She'll find a way to hit us harder next time. The council might back her if she twists the story." He frowned, thinking about the council's cold judgment. Then we need to be stronger. Maybe we can learn more about this place, find weaknesses in their power. Mara's face brightened a little. There's an old ruin deeper down, she said. My maker told me about it before he vanished. It's said to hold secrets, maybe even something to stand against the council, but it's dangerous. The currents there can pull you apart. Thomas felt a surge of determination. We'll go together. If it helps us survive, it's worth it. They prepared carefully, taking extra weapons and tying themselves with a strong rope to stay linked. The swim to the ruin was tough. The water grew wild, tugging at them with unseen force. After what felt like hours, they reached a crumbling structure, its walls covered in strange carvings. Inside, the air was thick, and a faint hum filled the space. In the center stood a stone table with a glowing orb. Mara approached cautiously. "This might be it," she said. "A source of power, maybe." As she reached for it, the water around them churned and shadows formed, ghostly figures of past sea dwellers. They spoke in whispers, their voices overlapping. "Only the worthy may take," one said. "Prove your bond," another added. Thomas and Mara exchanged a look. "What do they want?" he asked. "A test," Mara replied. "They'll judge us." The ghost swirled, and the ruin shook. A vision appeared. Thomas back on his sinking ship, Mara watching from below, torn between saving him and following the rules. Then it shifted to their fights, their teamwork, and the moments they'd stood together. The ghosts grew silent, their forms fading. "You are bound," a voice echoed. "Take the orb." Mara lifted it, and a warm light spread through the ruin. The currents calmed, and they felt stronger, the orb's energy flowing into them. "This could shield us," Mara said, "or even challenge the council." They returned to the cave, the orb pulsing in Mara's hands. The turtle greeted them with a slow nod, sensing the change. But the peace didn't last. That night, the water erupted again. Lira returned with a larger force, her staff repaired and glowing brighter. Behind her, 2 council elders flanked her, their faces set with anger. "You've stolen from the ruin," Lira shouted. "That power isn't yours." Mara held the orb high. "We earned it," she said, "and we'll use it to protect our home." The elders raised their staffs, and the water surged. Thomas and Mara activated the orb, its light pushing back the attack. The turtle roared, joining the fight, its shell deflecting blows. The battle was fierce. Lyra's force clashed with their defense, the cave shaking. Thomas swung his sword, cutting an enforcer's arm, while Mara directed the orb's energy, weakening their attackers. One elder fell, overwhelmed by the orb's power, and the other hesitated. Lira screamed, charging at Mara, but Thomas intercepted, tackling her into the water. They struggled, and with a final push, he forced her staff into the cave floor, shattering it. The light died, and her force retreated, the elders dragging her away. The cave grew still. The turtle settled back, and Mara collapsed, the orb dimming in her hands. Thomas knelt beside her. "We did it," he said, breathless. She smiled weakly. "For now. But they'll come again." He helped her up, their bond stronger than ever. The sea was theirs to defend, and they'd face whatever came next, together. The cave was a mess after the battle, rocks scattered, nets torn, and the glowing pool rippling with leftover energy from the orb. Thomas and Mara worked to set things right, moving slowly as their bodies ached. The turtle stayed close, its presence a quiet reassurance, but the air still carried a tension they couldn't shake. Lyra's retreat felt temporary, and the council's silence only deepened their unease. "We need to understand this orb better," Thomas said, wiping sweat from his brow. He sat by Mara, who held the dimming object in her hands. Its light flickered, like it was waiting for something. Mara nodded, her fingers tracing its smooth surface. "It's old magic," she said. "My maker mentioned it once, said it could amplify our strength or call on the sea's will, but it needs focus, and I don't know how to control it yet." Thomas leaned closer. "Maybe we can figure it out together." "What did he say about using it?" She closed her eyes, thinking. "He talked about a chant, something to wake its power." "It's tied to the sea's heartbeat, deep, steady pulses. We'd need to sync with it." They spent the day trying. Mara hummed low tones, and Thomas tapped the cave floor, mimicking the rhythm of the waves. The orb pulsed faintly at first, then grew brighter as they found the right pattern. A warm current flowed through the cave, and the water around them seemed to listen. "It's working," Mara whispered, her voice full of wonder. But the moment was cut short. The water outside churned violently, and a new shadow loomed, larger than Lira's force. The council had returned, this time with all its members, their staffs glowing with a harsh light. Lira stood at the front, her face twisted with rage, supported by the elders. "You've defied us for the last time," she shouted. "The orb belongs to the council, and you will pay." Mara clutched the orb tighter, its light flaring. "It chose us," she said. "We earned it, and we'll protect it." The council raised their staffs, and the water surged, slamming against the cave walls. The turtle roared, blocking the entrance, but the force was overwhelming. Thomas grabbed his sword, and Mara aimed the orb, its energy pushing back. The fight began. Council members struck with bolts of light, while Thomas and Mara countered with the orb's power. The turtle snapped at attackers, its shell cracking under a heavy blow. Thomas swung at an elder, his sword clashing with a staff, sending sparks into the water. Mara directed the orb's light, weakening the council's attack, but the numbers were against them. An elder broke through, grabbing Mara's arm and wrenching the orb away. She cried out, and Thomas lunged, tackling the elder. The orb rolled across the cave floor, its light fading. Lira seized the moment, snatching the orb and raising it high. "This ends now," she said, her voice cold. She channeled its power, and a wave crashed into Thomas and Mara, pinning them against the wall. The turtle slumped, injured, and the cave trembled, rocks falling. But then the orb pulsed on its own, its light turning wild. The sea seemed to rebel, currents swirling against the council. Mara's eyes widened. "It's fighting back," she said. "The sea doesn't want them either." Thomas struggled to his feet, grabbing a fallen staff. He struck Lira's hand, and the orb fell again. Mara dove for it, her fingers closing around it just as the council closed in. She raised it, shouting the chant they'd practiced. The orb blazed, and a massive wave erupted, throwing the council back. Lira screamed as the water dragged her and the elders away, their staffs shattering. The cave grew still, the council gone. The turtle lifted its head, weak but alive. Mara held the orb, its light steady now, and turned to Thomas. "We did it," she said, her voice shaking. He pulled her close, the water warm around them. "Together," he replied. The cave was theirs, the sea's power theirs to wield. But they knew the fight might not be over. Lira could return with new allies. For now, they rested, ready for whatever came next. The cave felt different after the council's defeat, calmer, yet charged with a new energy. The orb's steady glow lit the space, casting soft shadows on the repaired walls. Thomas and Mara worked to tend to the turtle, wrapping its cracked shell with strips of cloth and feeding it glowing plants to help it heal. The old creature rumbled gratefully, its presence a steady anchor for them both. "We can't let our guard down," Mara said, sitting by the pool with the orb in her lap. "Lyra's alive. She'll find a way to come back, maybe with something worse." Thomas nodded, sharpening his sword with a stone. "Then we keep training. And we learn more about this orb. If it turned on the council, it might have other powers we can use." Mara agreed, and they spent the days experimenting. They discovered the orb could summon small currents to move rocks or light up the darkest corners of the cave. One evening, as they chanted together, the water around them rippled, and a vision appeared, a map of the sea showing hidden caves and currents. "This could lead us to allies," Mara said, tracing a path with her finger, "or weapons." They decided to explore, tying themselves with the rope again and taking the orb. The journey was long, the water growing colder. As they followed the map, they reached a hidden cave, its entrance guarded by swirling currents. Inside, they found an old sea dweller, a crab-like figure with a wise, weathered face. It held a trident that glowed faintly. "You seek aid," it rasped, its eyes on the orb. "The council's fall has stirred the deep." "I felt it. We need help," Thomas said. "Lira will return, and we can't face her alone." The crab considered them, then handed over the trident. "This holds the sea's fury. Use it well. I'll send word to others who oppose the council's rule." With the trident and new hope, they returned to their cave. The turtle greeted them, stronger now, and the crab's promise of allies lifted their spirits. But the peace shattered one night when the water turned black. A massive shadow loomed. Lira, back with a new force. This time, she'd brought sea beasts, their eyes glowing red, and a dark figure beside her, cloaked and silent. "You thought you'd won," Lira sneered, her staff rebuilt and pulsing. "This time, the deep itself will bury you." The battle erupted. The turtle charged, snapping at a beast, while Thomas wielded the trident, its fury sending shockwaves through the water. Mara directed the orb, its light clashing with Lyra's staff. The cloaked figure moved fast, striking at Thomas with a spear, but he blocked it, the trident's power throwing the attacker back. Mara faced Lira, their energies colliding. The cave shook, rocks falling as the orb flared brighter. Thomas joined her, the trident amplifying their strength. The sea beasts roared, but the turtle and crab's allies, fish and eels summoned by the crab, attacked, turning the tide. Lyra's force weakened, and the cloaked figure fell, revealing a council elder who'd sided with her. With a final push, Mara and Thomas combined the orb and trident's power. A wave crashing over Lira, she screamed, her staff breaking, and was dragged into the dark water, her allies fleeing. The cave grew quiet, the allies swimming away, their task done. Mara and Thomas stood together, the orb and trident dimming. The turtle rumbled, and the cave felt secure. "It's over," Mara said, leaning against him. "For now," Thomas replied, smiling, "but we've got this place and each other." The sea was theirs, a home forged in battle, and they knew they'd defend it, whatever came next. The cave hummed with a quiet strength in the days that followed, the battle's echoes fading into a steady rhythm of life. The turtle patrolled the entrance, its shell nearly healed, while the orb and trident rested on a stone shelf, their glow a constant reminder of their victory. Thomas and Mara worked to rebuild, weaving new nets and planting more glowing vines to brighten the space. The crab's allies occasionally visited, bringing news of the deep. Lyra's force was scattered, but whispers of her survival lingered. One morning, as they sat by the pool, Mara traced the map from the orb's vision. "There's a current here," she said, pointing to a line that branched off. "It leads to a place my maker called the heart of the sea. He said it's where the sea's power begins. Maybe it can strengthen us for good." Thomas looked at the map, feeling a pull he couldn't explain. "Let's go," he said. "If it can protect us, it's worth the risk." They prepared carefully, taking the orb, trident, and rope. The swim was grueling. The current fought them, pulling and twisting, but they held tight. After hours, they reached a vast chamber, its walls pulsing with light. In the center floated a crystal, its glow filling the space with warmth. The air thrummed and voices whispered, ancient, gentle. "You've come," a voice said. "The sea recognizes you." Mara stepped forward. "We seek its strength," she said, "to protect our home." The crystal pulsed, and a vision showed their journey, storms, fights, and the bonds they'd built. "You are its guardians now," the voice continued. "Take its essence." The crystal split, releasing a drop of liquid light. Mara caught it in the orb, and it flared, merging with the trident's energy. A wave of power washed over them, their shimmers deepening, their strength growing. The chamber shook, sealing the path behind them, but they felt ready. Back at the cave, the turtle rumbled in approval. Sensing the change, they tested their new power, summoning gentle currents to clean the cave, lighting it with a brighter glow. But the peace was short-lived. That night, the water darkened again. Lira emerged, her form twisted, her staff replaced by a jagged blade. Beside her stood a new figure, taller, with eyes like black pits, radiating a cold power. "You can't stop the deep's true ruler," Lira hissed. The figure raised a hand, and the water froze around the cave, trapping them. Thomas gripped the trident, its fury surging, while Mara aimed the orb, its light clashing with the ice. The turtle charged, cracking the freeze, and they fought. Lyra's blade met Thomas's trident, sparks flying, while Mara's orb weakened the figure's power. The cave trembled, allies from the crab joining the fray, eels biting, fish darting. The figure laughed, its voice chilling. "You're nothing," it said, freezing Mara's arm. Thomas roared, driving the trident into the ice, shattering it. Mara broke free, merging the orb's light with the trident's fury. A wave erupted, engulfing Lira and the figure. They screamed, their forms dissolving into the dark water, gone at last. The cave stilled, the ice melting. The turtle rumbled, and the allies swam off. Mara and Thomas collapsed, the orb and trident dimming but steady. "It's over," she said, her voice hoarse. Thomas nodded, pulling her close. "We're the sea's guardians now." The cave glowed, their home secure, their bond unbreakable. The sea was theirs, and they'd protect it forever.